federal government enforcement. I think the federal government is largely responsible, once it puts these pieces of legislation in place, for the implementation of these pieces of legislation. And I think that's where the failure rests today. We're in a conservative political climate today, and I think that contributes, I think, to a lack of attention to these kinds of issues, and I think we will continue to confront that in the future.
Well, you know, Dr. Baldwin, we've got about 3 minutes here, and what I'd like to do now is to have you to make some statements in reference to, and to speak primarily, as we often try to do, to speak primarily to some of the younger people in terms of their responsibility, in terms of what they have to do in order to not only make the Civil Rights Act a reality, but in terms of improving their own lives as well as the lives of others.
As I said earlier, one of the provisions of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 calls for improvement in educational opportunity and equality in educational opportunity. I think for young people today, they must make sure that they take advantage of these kinds of educational opportunities that have been provided over the last 4 decades because of civil rights legislation. Because if these opportunities are not taken into account or embraced, then somehow or another we fail.
And so there's still a real need for civil rights legislation. There's still a real need for resources that are available, et cetera.
And there's still also a need for us as African Americans to demonstrate that not only that these pieces of legislation are needed, but that we're going to do our best to benefit from them once they are put in place. And that means taking advantage of opportunity once it is provided through civil rights legislation. Otherwise, our whole cause is meaningless.
You know, very soon we will celebrate, I think, this year, the Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, and of course you have played a very, very significant role in terms of helping us to highlight that. But now, what would you say in terms of the upcoming celebration of Dr. Martin Luther? I mean, what should the attitude of individuals be in reference to this great celebration?
I think that given the fact that the next celebration is in '05, I think it would be great for us to think of King in relationship to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, because he was so instrumental in the introduction and passage of both of these pieces of civil rights legislation. So I think we need to remember him in that connection. Over the years, we've remembered him in connection with global issues, remembered him in connection with affirmative action, economic issues. We've discussed him in relationship to the issues of violence and nonviolence. But I think the next celebration should be devoted to viewing him and celebrating him in relationship to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
And of course that would be a great way to honor Dr. King in this upcoming celebration.
And also to rekindle our commitment to the fulfillment of these pieces of legislation.
Well, Dr. Baldwin, let me simply say over the last few seconds that we have here that we certainly appreciate you coming by and giving us that information about the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but it only continues what you've done for us over the last many years.
Thank you.
You've given us so much excellent information, and you've sort of provided somewhat of a platform for us to have a real understanding on this particular show in reference to what the Civil Rights Act was all about, not only the act, but what civil rights has meant in the United States of America. And I think it's because of those efforts that we're able to talk about the progress that we've had.
Thank you.
And of course, let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.